Hi guys, Epic Tales in the building, and I'm with AJP again. The last time, AJP had a lot of hot takes. Let's see what he has in store for us today. And yeah, I'm really excited to be here with you guys. And yeah, AJP, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm out here looking like ANCAP Che Guevara right now. So I'm doing pretty chill things right about now. Uh but other than that, yeah, we just got done talking about some, stupid, like badly written books and all that type of things. And just like sort of like, the nature of prose again, because I'm very much a stickler when it comes to prose. And we kind of talked about the other extreme of like what's bad prose, and I typically always cite Irene Ildice by an author I can't even remember the name by. But basically, she was a woman who was the wife of, I believe, a merchant or someone that was in charge of a bookseller merchancy, that type of thing, basically. And the book itself was a mess of actual purple prose, so actual like garbage jargon type of thing there. Lots of like god awful grammar and syntax and a lot of nonsensical lines and passages. And the book was so utterly reviled that Mark Twain, Tolkien, and C.S. Lewis, in their own little groups, in their own little sections, like the Inklings themselves, would go around and read the book for as long as they could without breaking into laughter, basically. And the book itself is pretty funny because it is it's atrocious. Like me and Epic, we were reading some passages, and it's just utter nonsense. Basically, it's so just verbose. Just to give you guys sort of an idea, let me see if I can go ahead and find a passage right now, because it is something else. Like just like listen to this, okay? So it's like this. Sympathize with me, O deed. Ah, no, cast your sympathy on the chill waves of troubled waters, fling it on the oasis of futurity, dash it against the rock of gossip, or better still, allow it to remain within. I don't even know. Like, I don't even know what she means by this. The false and faithless bosom of the hurried or buried scorn. And it's such just. It's trite.
Nonsense.
It's trite. Like everyone
It's
always talks about like,
nonsense.
waxing and waning of poetic prose, and it's just like, yeah, that's an example right there. That's just garbage. That's just awful. And it's a common thing there. Like I'm not saying like you don't have to pull out a freaking dictionary every once in a while, but it's just like Jesus. Oh, hello, Black and Blue. We're talking about garbage writing right now, as we always do here.
Yeah. I was in a live stream with him yesterday. His name is Dan, and yeah, is a really cool guy. And yeah, it was really nice to meet him and everything. And just to give context, we're talking about like prose and writing, and AJP is giving an example of someone who um, is is like very very purple prose, and it's like and you could tell like they really like put their mind into doing it, but it just comes off as pretentious and very, very just weak, just utter garbage and nonsense. So let me ask you a question, AJP. How do you find the balance between like purple prose, like prose that is just like just way too flowery, and prose that is like accessible and simple for like and has flow? Like how do you like find that balance when you're writing?
So while I'm writing, I always tend to focus on a certain thing. I tend to focus on the primacy of, well, emotion in that type of situation there. So you'll notice like a lot of like bad purple prose, a lot of writers that typically tend to like, ham up a certain scene a lot of ways. Like the Hunger Games. I had a friend named Boot who showed me a passage from that. I never read a chapter of those books in my life. I'm probably never going to after I read this passage, but it's basically like, oh, her heart, it bumped and thumped and chipped and whipped. It was like a budding rose that shriveled and slithered down and bloomed inside of newly fresh and new. Do you see the issue already there? It's you're trying too hard to capture an emotion, a feeling, a sensation. It comes off like you're talking like a pompous prick, and no one wants to hear that because it's you're hamming it up essentially. Like it's very melodramatic. It's very like sort of like contentious. And then there's like the other extreme where you don't really capture an emotion of something properly. You're just saying like, oh, he said this and he walked across the room and he did this and he did that. And it's just like that's not very intriguing in terms of imagery. So what you want to do is that you never want to really like sort of uh like like sort of like enhance like a certain scene without need for that. Like speaking of that pretentious with Baker is in a weird area where at times I can certainly feel like he can be a bit too grandiose with his prose and like how his characters act and talk, especially in the nature of like sort of like theatrics. And I can certainly see that as like a flaw at times within him with how Baker actually does it. But when it comes to things like, the Great Ordeal and the Unholy Consult, when it comes to like the nature of how he uses his prose and what he's trying to convey, that's a bit more justified in terms of what the drama there is. I certainly think he delves too much and dances and tarries a bit with that type of prose. And I think it's a case that he could have pulled back. Because the thing with Baker that I have issues with is that he's good at writing the characters, he's good at emotion, he's good at capturing something, but it can feel like it's way more big of a deal than it actually should be. And I think what needs to be done there is that you don't get too into like, metaphors, too into simile, too much in like poetic like allusions or like comparisons or ideas that are so like grandiose. When it comes to emotion, you tend to not like do that. Like it seems like it's the end of the world, but it never truly is. Like you want to have that sense of like you're there, you're sinking into depression, you're sinking into like this sense of despair, like you're just broken and shattered, but you don't want to like make it feel like it's disingenuous. That's a thing about that. It's authenticity as when it comes to writing. I think people aren't authentic enough when it comes to how they present emotion at times. My biggest clear example for this is Axe of Cain, and I know someone's probably going to be watching this. It's not going to be happy about that. I think Axe of Cain is some of the most disingenuous emotion and character writing I've seen in a while when it comes to emotion, and it's too much of like emotion and hamminess, and at the same time taking itself too seriously and being really confused about its identity. And it's like it's purple in the sense of like the emotions it's trying to convey and capture, but it's so awful in like the actual like literal characters themselves. And it's monologue dissonance basically. That's what we need to focus on. I don't think people use that term enough, but like what your characters are actually doing and saying versus what you're making them say inside their characters themselves. Like you have like a 20-page monologue inherently like trying to like justify a certain action, but if there's no primacy or no build up or no sense of like actual like connection towards the character themselves and the body they're inhabiting, you're going to have a sense of dissonance in that type of regard. Just don't flower things up and don't make them sound like so like, oh, woe is me, I stand upon the stage lonesome as me, and I see to me like some sense of grandiosity. It's like you're not Shakespeare. I'm sorry to say this, like even Shakespeare, like that's not real emotion. I shouldn't say that, but it's inherently more poetic because that's how Shakespeare wrote. He's capturing real emotion. To be or not to be is like one of the most perfect soliloquies because of how real the emotion is. Like even in terms of like poetic and like grandiosity, it's very authentic when it comes to like Hamlet's like grief over like depression, his confusion, his angst over all it all. And it works because Hamlet himself is so young. He's so just wrought with like disenfranchisement, and he's just contemplating whether or not it's even worth living anymore, and the suicide there. And what's going to really sell something is going to be the actual performance itself. So it's going to be like sort of like it's basically like that. Prose is like a certain type of actor. Like it's the difference between a marriage story versus like a soap opera. Like a marriage story has like some of the most raw acting you'll see out there because it's very authentic, it's very real dialogue, it's very curt and straight to the point without any of the other like nonsense to it. Whereas a soap opera has like the dramatic music, the like sort of like the needlessly like pretty faces, like they try to cry, but it's like not real crying.
Pretty faces.
It's like it doesn't even sound like they're crying. It sounds like they're moaning. It's just like I can't handle it. It's just like when you watch like a marriage story, like the emotion there is so raw. It's just so good. It's so good right there. I love it.
AGP, what are you reading now?
I got a whole bunch of books. Rereading some Malazan stuff right now. I'm reading Sexual Personae by Camille Paglia. One of my favorite philosophical books. It's beautifully written. I adore it quite a bit. And I'm also reading Philip K. Dick, author of Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep and also The Man in the High Castle. I'm not sure about that other one.
Wait, pause for a second. How many books do you read at a time?
No, dude, I'm reading so many. I'm just like containing it right now. I have like a whole shelves like beside me of like books I'm reading right now.
Wow.
I'm also oh yeah, I'm
I
also reading
I can
Hellblade.
only manage one at a time.
I
I
can.
can I can only manage one at a time. Like my brain can only like especially if it's like a book that I'm really enjoying and I'm like devouring like intellectually, like I have to like one at a time.
Yeah.
One at a time.
I typically can't. Like I want to consume so many books and I want to analyze them and like discuss them, and it just like I get more satisfaction if I'm reading stuff like at the same time. That certainly kills like how I can actually like read stuff. But I tend to balance it by reading things that are a bit easier to read. Like I'm reading Hellblazer, the Garth Ennis run specifically, which was one of my favorite comic book runs, and I consider it art because it is Kino. I'm also reading Preacher as well because I love Garth Ennis a lot. I think he's one of the best comic book writers, and I typically like balance out any like complex stuff with him because he's a mix of like actual like intellectual writing and comics and like good old Garth Ennis fun because he's Ennis. He wrote The Boys after all the comic version, which is actually the better version. And he's just fun. I really love Ennis. He's childish, he's juvenile, but I love him. I love him to death.
So I have a question. Has anyone in the comments watched The Boys or seen the comics?
Let's see.
By the way, as well, like I think this is very interesting. Like when you're in a slump, what kind of books did you read?
I'm in a slump.
How do you get out? How do you get out of a slump? Like what characterizes a book that gets you out of a slump?
Let's see. It's either something that's very much going to draw a lot of emotion within me, a lot of like interest to keep reading it, or very simple to read. Like I say Dresden Files, any type of graphic novels, and maybe the Kraftwerk Legacy series. I think those are three that I read a lot to get out of a sort of a slump. Because they're very easy to read, but they have like enough like interesting like character intrigue and a lot of like sort of like basic stuff that's nothing too complex, but it's still like actually well written, and it draws out a lot of that sort of like creative like energy within me, and it makes me go like like that, like that, like that, like that. I want to keep on reading pretty much.
For me, it's there's one writer guaranteed. Like every time I'm in a slump and I read him, I just like snap out of it. And it's a very very simple writing, but then the guy writes like he's very inspired by anime and manga. So he when you're reading it, you feel like you're literally in an anime, and that's like Will White. Anything from Will White. So the Traveler's Gate, the Cradle series, like they're not so complex, but it's like it's constantly exciting, and like the plot is just constantly moving forward. So it's not. I don't have to like invest too much thought. I'm just having a good time. It's like I'm almost just watching like like something really interesting.
Yeah, I hear a lot of good things about Will White. I read the first book when I was like a couple years back when it was released. I don't remember anything about it, so I'm not going to give any opinions about it. I just don't remember liking it too much, and that's all I'm going to say pretty much. I just know it's wuxia, basically. That's how you pronounce it. Like I think it's like wuxia.
Wuxia.
I'm trying to think of like how the proper Chinese pronunciation is, because I know some people get more like specific about that, but I really do. I'm mixed on wuxia because like I read a Hero Reborn, like one of like the genre defining things about that, and also some like more like the ancient Chinese literature from the regards that inspired it, and I could see how that can inspire a lot of the tropes within that genre because I read some of the more mainstream wuxia, and they're not they're not exactly great. They tend to be like sort of similar in a lot of how they're structured.
All of them are similar. All of them, the plots are so similar, and that was why I stopped reading them. But there are just like a few that like I read and I was like that really stayed in my mind, and those are the ones that that kind of had like darker themes to them and were kind of less predictable.
Reverend Insanity, I'm presuming. You should read that one.
Which one?
Reverend Insanity.
I read Reverend Insanity, but it wasn't Reverend Insanity. Wow, you've read. Wow, that's actually. Is there a book? Is there like something you haven't read, AJP? But anyway, like one I read was Warlock of the Magus World. That one is pretty popular. It's like Lilin. that character is so badass. Like it's so badass. Like it's so, and that one, unlike a lot of other like wuxia novels, that one there seems to be like there's a lot of build up and a lot of plotting, like not laid out plotting where it's like so predictable, but like, and at certain points you don't know what is going to happen, and then when it happens the payoff is just like insane. So wuxia, like Warlock of the Maker's War, and those ones I kind of almost don't and I feel like it was from reading wuxia that I realized that I feel like especially the few that I enjoyed, that it's more about the story than the writing itself. But then after a while, the writing was too much for me to deal with, so I had to get back to my more Western writers.
Yeah, Chinese literature and how they write things is very much odd. I'm not sure what exactly is like the inspiration. I just know like with Confucianism, artistic like endeavors, because that's like a very much sort of like a foundation of how like China itself structures itself. It's sort of like, okay, so legalism isn't like the exact way to describe how China's manufactured, but it's sort of like a combination of like Confucianism and legalistic philosophy sort of like intertwining, and that tends to lead to like a lot of emotions sort of like not being the focus there. It's more, it's so weird, like it's so weirdly plot fused and like not at the same time. It's like the characters are literally like, they feel like devices. They don't even feel like human beings. They feel like sort of like, like very like weird caricatures, and yet they have such a like weird complexity to them. If that makes any sense at all, like Reverend Insanity I think is like the peak of that. It's such a weird entity of like the series I've ever read, because it's so like clear like Chinese in terms of like how it focuses itself and like how it sort of like structures its philosophy and its ideas basically. And that's a shame what happened to that series, because that series is like on like permanent hiatus because China banned it because of
Oh, China banned it.
yeah, corruption reasons. Apparently an author there, this is just rumors, I'm just saying this is alleged, it's alleged so I don't get sued by like cross-country stuff. But apparently an author there, the author of Soulland, I think it was his name, like there's a rumor going around Chinese websites that he lobbied to get it banned because like it was like anti-government. And it's because of that he basically like had to put the series in like permanent hiatus, and he had to write more like pro
safer stuff. Oh, okay.
yeah, pro
Wow.
state stuff in order to actually get back in their favor. He doesn't know if he's ever going to get it back, but he's like trying to fight to like get it back basically, because it was like, too dark, too violent. Like, like how Chinese like obscenity laws typically go, like they're very like out there, like
very strict. Yeah,
like you're not allowed, I think it's like the case like you're not allowed to show zombies. Like that was a rule not too long ago back in the day. That's like we had like the Call of Duty zombies Chinese version has like cyborgs instead of like actual zombies. And I know that there was a zombie arc in Revenant Insanity, so I can see that being used as like like potential immorality laws basically. Like that's one of the reasons I'm like I'm not particular towards like the Chinese state at times, besides like human rights violations, but that's besides the point.
I had a super huge pause from reading, but then read 4 books in the last few weeks, but now I'm out of ideas for the next one. I know like Lena has like she's into like dark stuff, and like she's into like morally gray characters, and basically she's into the like the darker themed books and everything. And she has like she's read a couple of classics as well, so she has like really specific taste. What would you suggest would be like something maybe not to, because she's also not trying to force it, but like, so what would you suggest would be like something she can pick up that maybe it's not too much, but it's like kind of light-ish?
I recommend anything by like Mario Puzo. I recommend reading the Family by which is about a book about the Borgia family of the Vatican back during the Renaissance. It's a book that's basically essentially based on like, we do bad things, but we're not necessarily bad people. That's kind of like the whole thing about that book. It's like, the Borgias themselves are like a very like morally questionable people, but they were like sort of like raised in a circumstance that was like defined by the world. Like, I think that's a good book for like pretty much anything. It's a pretty like strong like last novel, Puzo, because he sadly died before he finished writing it, so his girlfriend had to finish it.
Oh, that was the one that he didn't finish before he died.
Yeah, that his girlfriend had to finish writing it basically. And it's also Omerta. Omerta is not very good, but it's the family. I think it's like a pretty strong novel. It has very beautiful prose and it's very
Yeah.
like passionate.
I mean, like with Mario Puzo, I think I've only read like The Godfather and Ometa as well.
Yeah, Armata, that's the third part. The Sicilian I really love because the Sicilian, although it's part two of the Godfather trilogy and it's not really connected, that's annoying, but it's a very important part of like the Italian like identity regarding like sort of the divide there and sort of like the I think like a lot of people can understand like we have more sympathies towards people who like fight against the law than we do like the actual law abiders themselves, unless like they're actually good people.
Everybody wants to relate with the rebels, you know.
Yeah, because like it's about a specific like bandito back during that time during the Sicilian like World War II era that was basically like Robin Hood, and it's been widely stated like he basically might have been killed by the state itself, and it's been widely reported that he was, which was controlled by Ndrangheta, which was a major. It's another branch of like the mafia that's more powerful than like we have in America, like rather than like the Cosa Nostra. The Cosa Nostra is like the one we're familiar with. Ndrangheta is like a major like multi-trillionaire branch basically, and they controlled Italy during like the fascist regime of like Mussolini, and they basically cast out every other mafia clan from Italy so they can have absolute power basically.
Just for a second, so everyone go check out Colin's Corner. Like that is a YouTube channel I just discovered. He's a very new booktuber, and he has pretty interesting content. I had lucky enough to like meet up with him at Steve's like live stream yesterday. He's a really cool guy. So go check him out. And yeah, thank you for coming over. I really appreciate it. And yeah,
thanks for coming, Colin.
Do what you got to do. Do what you got to do. So like among these books here, like I feel like the one I really want to read is the Dragonborn Chair by Tad Williams. Like that is one writer. That is one writer that like I want to get to so bad, but like I just haven't gotten to it yet because every time I see the size of the book, I'm just like, and I heard that it was this series that inspired the Song of Ice and Fire as well.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, you can see like a lot of the inspirations there like are more cosmetic than they are literal, but it's very much like driven and inspired by Tad in a lot of ways because Tad's the GOAT. He's great. He's a beautiful writer. I think he's one of like the best like prose writers in all of like fantasy. Honestly, like he's just so good. I was just like, oh my god, dude! I trust me. If we didn't have to censor ourselves, I would be just like saying a whole bunch of disgusting stuff about like how good Tad's prose is. It is just it's beautiful. I love it so much. Like the second book has like one of the most beautiful scenes I think I've ever read. Like period. It's just like a seamless flow, like word. I just it's so good.
I keep hearing great stuff about this, and like how many books is in the series?
So the first series is 3 books. The second series right now is going to have like by the looks of it 4 books. They're all.
He's still writing it.
Yeah, he's been writing a new sequel series basically. It's called The Last King of Bolsonaro, and it's beautiful, man. Like the first book was kind of rough a bit. It had some issues, but the rest of those books, man, I have never cried like so much in a series since like A Song of Ice and Fire and Wheel of Time.
You cried?
yeah. Hey, I'm more emotional than people think. It's easy to make you cry.
Let me see. Can anyone drop Colin's link? Let me see if I can put it in the description. Okay, got it. But yeah, like Tad Williams is one of those writers that I definitely have to get to, and I cannot wait to get to. Like I've literally bought the book. I just haven't gotten to it yet.
Yeah, dude, trust me, it's gonna be great. I haven't read We Are the Dead. I was gonna read that a long time ago when I was reading the Reborn Empire, and then the Reborn Empire killed any type of like will I had to read anything Asian fantasy inspired because it was mediocre beyond any measure. So I haven't done that book any justice. I'm not gonna have opinions on that. I have never heard about the Pillars of the Earth. I might have to check that out at some point. And I never really got to done finishing the Lives of Lamora.
Do you DNF it?
No, I haven't finished it yet. I'm still reading it. I had to put it on hold. The only thing I know is that like apparently like him, the author of like Locke Lamora, is friends with Matthew Stover, the author of Axe of Cain, which I'm hoping is not an indicator of the quality of it.
Yeah, I know you weren't really a fan of like Acts of Kings.
It's garbage. I'm sorry. It's garbage.
Wow.
I'm gonna stand by it.
Slowly Red would disagree with you.
I know. Okay,
And
I love Red. I
Shogi
love.
would disagree with you as well.
Oh, we have the conversation there.
Like I was literally I was like at some point I was like, okay, this has to be my next series, the Acts of Cain, the Acts of Cain. And then I asked AJP about it, and just like in like 10 minutes, I was just like, do I want to really invest myself in this? Because sometimes, just sometimes, like sometimes when I hear like if someone has like a valid criticism on something, and I'm reading the book and I can see it, like I literally can't stop seeing it. Like it would bother me for the rest of the book. So I try not to listen to too many opinions when I want to start a book and everything. But you see, the Lies of Locke Lamora, I heard a lot of people compare it to the First Law. There, some people think it's like kind of in that region of dark fantasy.
I've seen that. I've seen people compare it to a Tarantino movie, which is like also a bit weird. I never really got those vibes. I always felt like it was a bit more of its own, like sort of like charm and how it like writes and stuff like that. Yeah, honestly, it reminded me a bit of like I don't know why, but it reminded me a bit of like KJ Parker, the author of like 16 Ways to Defend like a walled city or like How to Invade It, pretty much. It's very much a sort of like thing of like it's its own personality, which I can give props to towards. I think his name's like Scott Lynch. Is that his name? The author of that series?
I think so.
Yeah, but towards Lynch himself, like he has his own personality and charm, which I can say is more than like most authors have nowadays. It's a rarity, and he actually has like pretty decent prose. So like good for him, pretty much.
What I liked about what I liked about that I heard what I heard about it that I liked was it has like a real sense of like the emotions between the characters, and the relationship between the characters is like really well done, and you can really sense like the bond between like the friends and everything, and I really like that. Is something that I like, and that matters to me a lot, especially when I'm like judging characters, like how much I like a character or how much I enjoy the dialogue or something. It's like the relationship between the characters, because that for me is like the basis of good dialogue. It's like the basis of the what they call it, the context of the dialogue, and like
the chemistry of it.
The chemistry, basically. It's something that I really like when the relationship between characters is really good, even if it's not like a positive one. If it's toxic, I don't know why specifically I like when it's toxic, because it's like seeing like the understanding the reasons why it's toxic, and seeing like codependence or whatever is fueling that toxicity. It's always very interesting for me.
Yeah, it feels more raw typically. That's why I love The Boys comic more than I do like the show, because the show, like the boys don't even they don't even interact most of the time. While in the comics, like they have a lot of chemistry, they have like arguments, they feel like bros, like they feel like, hey, it's the boys, hey Mike, it's just like that type of thing, basically. Like it feels like a proper group of friends in the comics. In the show, well, the show is like god awful and it's poorly written and it's terrible.
Really?
Oh yeah, it's awful. Like it's some of the worst writing I think I've ever seen in a show in quite a long while. It is just a garbage heap, and I don't get people who say it's better than the comics. I legitimately don't ever buy into that. I will never understand that mentality, especially when it comes to like the world building Ennis did in the comics versus what happened in the show, where it's like non-existent. But how it is.
What? So I haven't read the comics, but I've seen the show and I liked it. I heard that the comics were a lot darker, like much more like more gory and very much more like what the hell is going on here.
Well, it's because of Garth Ennis. That's the main thing. Garth Ennis is like, he's known for being he has a very dark sense of humor, and it borders on juvenile a lot. It's no secret that he kind of hates most superheroes. He only likes Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, and the Punisher. But even then, the Punisher's not a really superhero, but he just really likes the Punisher a lot because he's such a fun character. In the comics, there is like a lot of like shock value, a lot of like gross out humor because Ennis likes that. Like if you read Cross, that gives you an idea of like how Garth Ennis tend to handle like sort of like how he himself is. But yeah, there's a lot of shock, there's a lot of gore stuff. I never really felt like that detracts from it. It's hyper violence because Garth Ennis likes hyper violence. That's just how he is. I don't get really this sense of snobbery like when it comes to that. Like if comics are arts, which I do consider them to be, I think Garth Ennis is like more of a satirical author with really great characterization, basically, than like say like a lot of people give him credit for. Like I think he is like a proper artist and he has like spirit and a voice than compared to like most of the trite out there. I can understand some detraction and can understand some issues people have, like how some of the characters are, but and I certainly one thing I will give the show, I think they did Homelander better in the show than they do in the comics. But there's such different characters in both versions. It's like really not a fair comparison. Everyone else is like so much more worse written, in my opinion, in the show than they are in the comics. There's a lot
Even
of
Butcher.
Butcher is so much better. I've seen people say he's like a flat character in the comics, but no, like Butcher's characterization is so less confused than it is in the show. In the show, like it really does feel like at times they just don't know how to like properly like handle him at times. Like it feels like too much of like a tertiary and simplistic thing. And I think an issue is like they made him sympathetic. You detract from Butcher when you make him sympathetic and you remove like certain things that happen in the comics. Like they removed and changed one certain thing, and I hate that. Especially when it comes towards Butcher Baker Candlestick Maker, which I think is like one of the best comic runs in history. Period. I think that's one of the best issues in comics, and the fact that gets butchered, pun, funny, in the show is an injustice beyond any type of measure to me. Like I think that's like one of the best like characterization things out there.
You said something that I find very interesting. You said comics is one of the arts, at least I consider it to be. I do not like that train of thought about like when it comes to like things like art and literature and stuff, where some forms of like expressing yourself, like, or art or like thing is like excluded from what people would describe as higher literature or higher arts and everything. I feel like that is it's this snobbish attitude towards like certain types um of expression that I really don't like, because it's like who is like, why it's, and we spoke about this a little bit in yesterday, like this idea of like gatekeeping what we considered respectable or art, you know, from other forms of expression. And it's like I feel like every form of storytelling is a form of art, because storytelling in its form, in itself, it's art. You know what I mean?
Yeah, in France, actually, they consider comics art. Particularly, there was an exhibition back in, I think, like 2011, 2012. It's actually, I did an essay on that. Let me see if I can look it up real quick, what it was called. But basically, the Louvre, they did an exhibition for comics, and they had JoJo. They had some other famous artists I can't name because their names are kind of hard to pronounce, but they had JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, a lot of French, a lot of Estonian, a lot of like, you know, Dutch comics there, because in France they consider comics a ninth art. It is a form of expressionism, artistic masterpieces there. In fact, I own two comics from the Louvre. Let me see if I can get them real quick, but they're basically like, they're considered like a form of artistic masterpiece there, not a form of expressionism, another form of like how you convey something. It's just an issue nowadays. We consider like, and this is one of the reasons like Garth Ennis kind of hates superheroes, is because we confuse the identity of comics with superheroes themselves, rather than like, you know, this field of like actual like artistic like experimentism and a lot of like, you know, sort of like in different ways. Like back in the Beat generation of like literature, back then we considered comics more of like a form of graphic novels. We considered just like another form of like expressing ideas. Whereas nowadays we more or less commercialize it, and what's actually like art is very much more limited compared to what it is now. Let me see if I can go get those comics real quick. That's all right.
Yeah, like I mean, if you consider it from any level, like just like the act of like drawing, coloring, storytelling as well, And something a trend on BookTube that I really really like is that like BookTube is starting to acknowledge. I've seen this from a lot of BookTubers starting to acknowledge manga as like reading and basically like just like art in itself, like storytelling. They are starting to appreciate that kind of storytelling, and it's funny that like shows like Berserk and Vagabond and One Piece and all of this stuff is becoming popular now. But like this is stuff that I was watching since I was like 11, and these are stuff that like inspired me, like made me cry, like give me countless hours of like creating hypothetical situations in my head. And these are characters that I really care about. Like if any of this, and it's the same way I feel about reading fantasy books and just reading stories and everything. And then someone comes and tells me that one is art and one isn't. Like, what are you talking about?
It's very pretentious. It's very like Berserk is most definitely art. Berserk is art.
Like on every level, the art style, everything is so. Berserk is such a good story, guys. You have to check it out.
Really, yeah. And yeah, this is what I mean. JoJo is art. It is considered art in France and in Europe. This is Rohan at the Louvre. You could buy this specifically from the Louvre website itself. Not the Louvre, the Louvre. Look at this art, man. Look at that. Look at this beauty. Look at all this beautiful print here. And then I have a piece here from one of my favorite artists, whose name I find almost difficult to pronounce. It's Bernard Yleseller and Jean-Claude Carrère. I hope I pronounced that right. Miss Francois is terrible. Look at this comic right here. This is the sky over the Louvre, and it's one of the best like comic runs, in my opinion. Such a beautiful, artistic masterpiece, and you could buy this pretty cheap. Aesthetically out of print because the exhibition ended not too long ago. But just look at that. Look at like the detail, like the designs in that regard there. The shading. It's just so beautifully well done. And also, of course, since I had mentioned Garth Ennis, let me pull this down real quick. Preacher, one of the best comic books ever. This shit's art right here.
That's a classic.
And let me get out.
It's a classic right there. So just like in light of what we're talking about now, like Dan, like that is that's like for the black and blue color, like you would love Berserk. I'm just throwing that out there. I feel like you would love Berserk. Like I see your I can kind of like I can see your taste, and I'm telling you love Berserk. If you're still on the stream, like that's just a thing there for you. But yeah.
And yeah, so yeah, it's another thing. Like typically, like art has always had like a weird elitism ever since like the Renaissance. Typically, like it was originally for like a social hierarchy. Basically, it was like if you were able to get like a piece of like art, that proved like you were wealthy, you were rich. And as we sort of like evolved out of that when it came to like modernism, and we had more of like an urban, more like down to man. Like nowadays, even rap is considered like art, and which I will consider art. I don't care what you say, Shulky. It's art. Tupac is art. It's poetry. I will say that. It's my boy Biggie. All right.
I have like a big poster of like Tupac and Biggie on my thing. Jimi Hendrix, like all the legends,
Marley, yeah. Coltrane, Thelonious Monk, Miles Davis,
Bob Marley. Have you had the, I know, right? Biggie is like, I love Biggie so much. Biggie is like, it's my happy place. But have you read this book, Hawk Quest?
Hawk Quest.
Robert Linden.
I think I've heard of it. I don't remember if I actually read it or not. Let me see if I remember it. Hawk Quest.
By Robert Linden.
Robert Linden, that's his name.
Like my TBR is already so large. Anytime someone gives me like a new book, like something in my heart dies. I'm also excited, but like something dies, and I'm just like, I add it to my TBR and everything. But
yeah, I never read that. Yeah, I never read it. It's new. So anytime the book is new, I typically haven't read it. That's typically like sort of like the weird rule of me. That's just how it goes. Oh yeah. Speaking of which, I have this also. Another good comic right here. Crossed. I love the Crossed comics. They are so great.
That was that the one you were showing me. I think the first time we spoke, and like
Yep.
you showed me some scenes that were like super super graphic, and I was just like, what the
I
fuck?
wish I could show them right now, but it crossed. Okay, I think we could. I can't say the word because I remember there's like this one the banned no words from YouTube. Uh, it is zombies that commit the worst crimes possible in known to humanity, told in very graphic and horrible detail. And I cannot say the word because YouTube was ran by a bunch of idiots. It's I love Cross a lot. People hate it. I think it's like one like it's one of the funniest, but it's also one of like the most gore things ever. I love it to death.
Hey, uh, Thursday now chanting Thursday, like I love that song so much. I love that song. It
Hey.
was just a dream. I used to read What Up magazine. You know, I'm still a black guy, man. I love
Oh, dude,
I love me some Biggie.
yeah. Listen, modern rap kind of sucks nowadays, but I've been listening to that band Clippings. I've been showing it to Narceel. They're so good.
Mhm.
Clippings is like one of like the best bands, not best rap groups out there for me.
Hmm,
They're just
nice.
so good. Let me see if I can link you to like a song here so you can listen to it later because like it's a reference towards China Mayville in one of his books, The City and the City. But they're really good. Like definitely get them to watch.
What manga do you buy?
Yeah, tell us Black and Blue. Which one did you get, my man?
Oh
Oh yeah.
man, Berserk. It's one of the most complete stories like I think I've read. Like it's every single note in like storytelling that I love, Berserk hits it hard. Have
You
you
have
read Uzumaki?
beautiful.
I've heard about Uzumaki, but I
I hate
haven't read it
Uzumaki. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it so much. Black and Blue, my boy. I'm
yet.
sorry.
So,
You're
so
gonna hate that.
no. Black, let me tell you something about it. Even if you say he hates it, does not mean you wouldn't like it. So don't feel discouraged to try it
Bro,
out.
okay, listen, okay. I don't care, and I don't care who you are, okay? You will hate how dumb the characters are in this book, okay?
Oh my
Junji
god.
Ito is a good artist, and he writes very, 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 very beautiful art, but the characters are so dumb in these stories. All right, I don't care if they're symbolic of, okay, but one of the characters in this book is so mind-numbingly stupid. I am just baffled that this is written by a guy who's so well respected. Okay, all right. I'm sorry
Who's the
there.
right? Who's the right of Uzumaki?
Junji Ito. I don't like
Oh,
Junji Ito.
Junji Ito.
Yeah,
Oh, that is a legend, man.
Junji Ito I think is a good artist that works when it comes to like his art. I don't think he's a good writer typically. He's too much of like what I think is like he's a very much a short story writer. He doesn't write good characters. You're there for the ideas. That's pretty much what it is.
What I love about Junji Ito is that the way like he makes you feel is so consistent. I have to acknowledge that it's intentional. And like when I notice like consistent intent, I cannot argue that okay, like I can like I even if I might not like it, I'm like, okay, this is exactly what he's trying to communicate and he's doing
Yeah,
it effectively. So hands
that's what
up,
he
you know.
he's sort of like the Jorge Luis Borges in a way. Of like Japan. Maybe that's not a good comparison, but Jorge Luis Borges, like he's not a good like storyteller or like character writer. You're there for his ideas and like how he writes and presents things. You're not necessarily there for his characters. You're there for his art and like the ideas behind that art typically. And I think like most of his stuff would be better if like he never wrote a piece of dialogue or any type of characterization ever, and he just focused on only like creating like
That
cool.
much, eh? That
Yeah,
much.
dude, Uzumaki would have been so good if it was just like a horror body thing. Like he didn't even try to do that. Just like make it pure, like non like dialogue type of thing. Because that can actually be more effective. Like all the weird grotesque stuff. The issue is that like just like when he tries giving these characters like actual like personalities and motivation, it's just like, yeah, no, he's not a good writer in that regard. He's an ideas guy. I don't even know what the theme of like Uzumaki was. I don't even know what that thing was about.
So I didn't want to say this. I bought Berserk Volume 1 for my 14-year-old kid. I attempt to get him to read. I read the first scene. I thought of a horrible fire. So, like, if it's any consolation, I started reading Berserk when I was 9.
Oh, you were even younger than
and
me.
I
I
turned
started
out
into
okay, I guess. So
I got into it when I was 11. Okay, I saw the eclipse when I was 11. Or like,
okay, I don't want to go into spoilers, but I would hate to spoil that moment for anyone. So let's be very careful.
yeah, we'll just call
But
it the
that
eclipse.
scene broke me. Like that scene, like it broke my heart. You know what? I say nothing else.
Yeah,
I say nothing else.
we want your reaction, Black and Blue, nice and raw.
Let's see. I know, right? Like I know. It's just like sometimes when the first book is bad, then you hear that like 9 books more.
You know, I'm trying to think of like, you know, like what was like the first book syndrome. Like I can't think of like any series that I like. I'm not into this right now. But I'm gonna read the other like 10. I can't think of any series I did that for because it's like that's like really like the hook, line, and sinker for like
Yeah.
everything there.
The book one has to be good.
Yeah. Or at the very least, like decent enough, and then like you just like surpass it like afterwards. I think that's like what most authors do.
It has to be something. It has to be interesting enough for me to like. I have to care about the story beyond just like writing and yeah, I have to care about the story before I am able to, even if the writing is not so good, if the story is, if I'm invested in the story, like what happens, you know, I can keep going. And this was something else that that was mentioned yesterday. It's like and especially with indie authors, sometimes the first book is not like the best representation of them. And one of them I can think of is like Red Rising. Was that indie? I think
No,
it's not indie, okay.
no.
But the thing was the idea is that sometimes with writers the first book is not really good.
Yeah.
And I know that people say that with Red Rising a lot, and then but now Red Rising has such a hardcore fan base because they're just like, yo, it gets better and it's so good now. So
Yeah. The first book of Red Rising, like that's very much like it's not addictive like what the rest of the series is. Like it was a case like Pierce Brown had to like in order to get published, he had to like transform like his artistic like voice to like fit what was popular. That's like the common thing. Like it was a Hunger Games era. That's what was the issue there.
Yeah, yeah. He's into JoJo. That's like his favorite. Yeah, JoJo is a classic, man. JoJo is like JoJo is such a good story because like I feel so. This was something I mentioned in live stream before. It's like I do not like when preaching morality is the writer of a story like places that on a higher pedestal than the actual story itself. I don't like it because it's just like I'm not trying to learn a lesson, especially when it's like on a subjective matter, you know. But JoJo is, I feel like it's perfect for even kids to watch or younger people to watch, younger audience to watch because like it's you can learn from that and you're not, it doesn't distract from the story, like the whole like nobility JoJo family, all that kind of stuff is really like good to watch and anyone can enjoy it. It's a classic for sure.
Yeah, and the best thing about JoJo is like most of the characters are flawed after part one. I know that's like weird to say, but like a lot of the JoJos tend to be kind of like borderline psychopaths, and I love that a lot. Like they have like such horrible personality issues, and I just adore it. Like they're just all terrible people, but like with hearts of gold. And that's like one of the reasons like I love like the first like 6 parts because of like that sort of ability. Part 7 to 9 is a lot more gray, very, 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 very gray, and especially with part 9's main character. He's an interesting little zoomer. I love him. I love my little gremlin boy of like part 9.
Nice. The Red Rising, I haven't read that yet. There's so much I haven't read. Like, imagine how I feel talking to EJP. Like, he's read everything, literally read everything. But yeah.
First Law, definitely not indicative of the series. Malazan, I feel it's weird. Like Malazan does feel weird because like there's a lot of stuff there that just kind of exists that's never brought up again. And I don't mean like major stuff. I mean like small like world building things that were clearly meant for like a movie script that just never go into the other books. it very much feels like that at times. Like it feels like a movie script that was turned into a book at times. It does really feel like that. But the other rest of the series, like it's definitely its own thing in terms of like personality and stuff like that. Red Rising, yeah, definitely. Those are first case like first book syndromes of like, yeah, that's not really what the series is about, but trust me, it's gonna get you invested if you start like going ahead from there on, pretty much.
Yeah. AGP, do you have anything about your own book that you want the people to know?
It's gory as hell.
So I've read part of Anarchy, and yeah, it's like that's AJP's book, by the way, and yeah, I feel like I feel like a lot of people who like are into like the kind of stuff I'm into, that's like the darker things, grim dark fantasy. I feel like Anarchy is going to shock you. It's like Anarchy is it's a really good book. It's something I would love to do like a read along, on my Discord and of course on the live stream as well. So like that we have that plan in the future when
you'll have me there to help you guys out when it comes to like
to hold our hands and basically guide us through the Anarchy experience, which is intentionally said to be traumatic, in a good way. But yeah,
I'm gonna make y'all scream. And yeah, just a heads up real quick, like so that was originally meant to be like a sort of the first like couple, like I think like 200 pages now. I think it's gonna be called in like the paperback. The first 200 pages were originally their own book, and then the second half of the series, like that was meant to be another book. After talking with like an editor, I basically combined two books that were entirely different into one giant book. And so it's gonna feel like a lot happens there, and I hope it feels like it does. That's all I'm gonna say. I hope you guys enjoy it whenever like you guys actually get around to reading it, if you ever do. And yeah, I'll be here pretty much answering questions if you guys ever have like any questions about like
yeah, there are a lot of questions. There are a lot of questions there because the world is so huge and it spans across time,
continents, histories, all that type of stuff. Pretty much.
Yeah. So yeah. So we're almost an hour in, and again, I'm just blown away about just how many people showed up. I think consistently we've had about at least 6 people on the stream, on average. So I am very excited. How can I get my hands on it? How can he get his hands on it, AJP?
It's available on Amazon. You can buy the Kindle version there. That's perfectly fine if you want to go ahead and buy it. I am going to be trying to release a paperback. I'm just doing some format editing. And I want to go ahead and just say I deeply apologize for the small font. The original paperback manuscript was originally 1,300 pages long, and I had to cut it down to 800 because Amazon is jerk-offs about length and printing size. So the font's going to be a bit tiny, and I hate it. But the second book going to be much more better formatted. So I deeply apologize for that. I'm going to try releasing the official paperback as soon as possible. But yeah, if you want to go and buy it, it's available on Amazon on Kindle for $90.
Do you have the link?
Let me go ahead and pull it up if that's all right.
Yes, please do.
Let me go ahead and find it.
Yeah, like I want to do a read along for it, and yeah, Dan, I would be great if you are a part of that. That would be dope. Yeah, right. I know for a fact like Dan would enjoy it, would like it because it's right in his alley.
All right, right in the chat.
No, that this is private chat, so this is only I can see this. I think you just post it in the comment. Let me just do that actually.
Yeah, that's.
I don't know if these links work on the comment section. Let me see. I think this is it.
Hopefully, it doesn't count it as spam. I would hope not, because I know like the.
Well, it's like it's my channel. Like I think I can post a link if I want.
Never know. Listen, man, YouTube's a mess. Okay, it's an unstructured.
It is a mess sometimes. Like it keep changing everything.
And that's why we got to break the monopoly. Okay, that's why we got to create our own YouTube platform. It'll be called Freedom Tube. Have blackjack and hookers.
Have you heard of Rumble? Apparently,
I
like
I have
it's
heard of it, yes, but the only reason I know
yeah,
about it is because of like I know like a bunch of memes are coming out from that. Like that that one guy, what's his name? Sneeko? I think that's what his name is. I know because like he's like saying stupid stuff
Sneeko
there.
and what's his face? Steve would do it as well. Like big on YouTube, they got canceled on YouTube, and then Rumble was like, "Oh, we'll never cancel you guys," and then they went to Rumble. And the big thing about Rumble is that they will never cancel you. But yeah, for now, I'm sticking with YouTube. In case the algorithm is listening, like push my content, please. And
Yeah, please. We need to make big, guys. Come on.
yeah. So I was just saying, thank everyone. Just wanted to thank everyone for being a part of this conversation, and everyone that showed up. I really, 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 really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Me and AJP enjoyed doing this, and I promise in the future, the live streams are going to be more structured. And yeah, we're going to have like a theme. Like right now, we're just getting comfortable with the idea of doing, with the routine of like, okay, every Saturday around this time, I'm going to be talking to my subscribers and the people that like what I like, my vibe and everything. So yeah, like this is the both of us, we're going to be running this show every Saturday. Thank you for showing up. If you haven't seen my content from this past week, check it out. It's all dope stuff. My my review for The Prince of Nothing is out. There's a dope ass animation, and yeah, it's just like really dope stuff. So check it out. Like, comment, and subscribe. Stay epic, and peace.
Peace.